We got a restraining order after my parents tried to sabotage our wedding. Then a final letter landed like a threat.
Hi, I'm Mark, 29, and my parents taught me one lesson real well: how not to treat your own kid. The first time I realized my parents didn't really see me, I was 10. My sister Leah had just turned 13 and was having this huge birthday bash at our house. Caterers, a rented tent, live DJ, the whole 9 yards. I stood by the window the entire afternoon waiting for someone, anyone, to mention my name. No one did. I didn't even get a slice of cake. Over time, I learned to stop expecting anything from them. Leah was their universe. Straight-A student, piano prodigy, varsity swimmer. I was just there, barely. They'd show up to her swim meets with t-shirts that had her name on them. I played one season of Little League, and they forgot the championship game. Mom texted me later that night saying, "Oh shoot, that was today?" But I wasn't totally alone. My grandparents, Dad's parents, saw me. Rescued me, really. They showed up to the games, clapped when I played a horrible rendition of Green Day on guitar, remembered every birthday, and talked to me like I mattered. They weren't flashy, just present. And when I turned 18, they were the ones who gave me a hug, a used Toyota, and a tuition check for college. My parents? They gave me a half-eaten cake with my name misspelt. So, when I proposed to my partner and we started planning the wedding, I already knew who I wanted walking me down the aisle. My grandparents, the two people who had earned that honor. And for a while, I thought that was the end of it. But when my parents found out, that's when the gloves came off. The phone call came on a random Tuesday. I was in the middle of trying to figure out if we could afford those string lights my fiancé liked for the backyard reception when my mom's name popped up on the screen. I stared at it like it was a ghost. She didn't call, ever. I let it ring. She called again and again. Fourth time, I picked up. She didn't even say hi. "When were you going to ask us to walk you down the aisle?" Her voice was cold, clipped, like she'd caught me stealing silverware or something. "I wasn't," I said, and I didn't flinch. I'd been rehearsing this moment in my head for months. I already asked Grandpa and Grandma. Dead silence. Then she exploded. "You ungrateful little—" She started, and I hung up. Instantly. It didn't take long for the fallout to start. By the end of that week, half my extended family had screenshots of a long, dramatic message my parents had sent out. It was this painfully theatrical guilt trip about how they'd sacrificed everything to raise me, and how I was now abandoning the people who gave me life. They begged family members not to attend the wedding, to stand in moral solidarity with them against their evil, ungrateful son. One of my cousins texted me, "Dude, your mom just sent me a 2-paragraph essay. Are you okay?" I wasn't. Not really. It hurt more than I wanted to admit. It wasn't about them not walking me down the aisle. That ship had sailed. It was the fact that even now, even when I was doing everything I could to keep the peace by inviting them at all, they still found a way to center themselves and try to ruin what should have been the happiest day of my life. I tried to ignore it. I really did. But then my fiancé got a message. Not just a passive-aggressive jab either, a full-on, multi-paragraph message from my mom, calling him a homewrecker, accusing him of turning me against my family, and warning him that if he married me, he'd never know peace with people like us in the picture. That was the moment I snapped. They could come for me all they wanted. I was used to it. But coming for him? Nah. So I opened up Facebook, wrote one long, brutally honest post about my childhood, their neglect, the favoritism, the loneliness, the years spent feeling invisible. I posted screenshots of the texts they'd sent to relatives. I named names. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it because the truth needed to breathe. I closed the app, put my phone on silent, and felt the air around me shift. What I didn't expect, though, was just how far the ripple would spread.
Less than 48 hours after I posted, my phone was blowing up. Not with hate, shockingly, with support. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years sent long messages apologizing for not realizing how bad things were growing up. A couple even told me they had their own quiet suspicions but didn't know how to ask. My dad's youngest brother, Uncle Theo, called and said, "I always wondered why your grandparents clung to you so tight. Now I get it." But then came the twist no one saw coming. My sister. She called me 5 times in a row. I ignored each one, assuming it was just her ramping up for a lecture about how I was ruining the family name or some other melodramatic guilt trip. But curiosity got the better of me. On the 6th call, I picked up. And man, she was livid. "You don't get it, Mark," she snapped, voice already cracking. "Do you even know what you've done? This isn't just some family drama anymore. You ruined Dad's business deal." I blinked. "What business deal?" She scoffed like I was playing dumb. "The one with Eldridge Holdings. Dad's been working on this for a year. It was huge. He had a meeting lined up with one of their investors. The guy backed out. He read your post, Mark. Apparently his assistant is friends with someone on your fiance's side." I couldn't believe it. "You're telling me a Facebook post cost Dad a business deal?" "Yes," she snapped. "He's devastated. You don't understand how bad this is. This deal could have changed everything. He was going to restructure the company. We were finally going to go national. Now he's back to square one." I was quiet for a beat. Then I said, "Good." She went absolutely silent, like I'd slapped her through the phone. And then came the tears. Not sad tears, angry ones. She went on this long tirade about how I'd always been jealous, how I'd always wanted to tear everyone else down because I couldn't stand seeing other people succeed. It was honestly pathetic. "I didn't ruin the deal," I said calmly. "Dad did that. He and Mom started this. They picked a fight with me over something they had no right to expect, and when I didn't fold, they tried to sabotage my wedding. You think Eldridge backed out because of my tone? No, it's because they realized our family is a PR disaster." I was done. I hung up, blocked her, again. That night, my fiancé and I sat on the couch in stunned silence. I half expected him to be worried, maybe even mad that this had turned into something so big, but he wasn't. He laughed. "Honestly," he said, "if one social media post was enough to make this investor run, your dad must have already had one foot on a banana peel. You just showed him where to slip." We high-fived. But I knew the war wasn't over. Not even close. My parents weren't going to take this lying down. I wish I could say my parents took the loss with dignity, maybe reflected, maybe apologized. That would have been a nice fantasy. Instead, they escalated. It started with a random number texting me at 7:12 a.m. on a Saturday. "You need to fix what you broke." No name, no context, just that. I blocked it and rolled over, thinking that was the end of it. It wasn't. That evening, I pulled into my driveway after work and saw 3 very familiar silhouettes standing near my porch. My parents and my sister. Arms crossed, faces tight, like they'd been rehearsing this ambush in the car. My stomach dropped. I didn't even get out of the car. I grabbed my phone and started dialing the non-emergency police line right there in the driver's seat. I wasn't interested in a conversation. I'd had 30 years of those and they'd never ended well. My sister rushed me before I could finish dialing. She yanked my phone out of my hand and hissed, "You don't get to call anyone. You don't get to hide this time." That was it. Something in me snapped, clean, sharp, irreversible. "You are trespassing," I said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "Give me my phone back, now." My dad stepped forward, red-faced, trying to play the calm authority figure he'd never been for me growing up. He launched into this speech about family reputation, sacrifice, and how I'd humiliated them publicly. He said I owed them an apology, that if I had any decency left, I'd call the investor and tell him I exaggerated. I laughed out loud. "You didn't ruin the deal," I said. "Dad did that. He and Mom started this. They picked a fight with me over something they had no right to expect, and when I didn't fold, they tried to sabotage my wedding. You think Eldridge backed out because of my tone? No, It's because they realized our family is a PR disaster. I was done. I hung up, blocked her, again. That night, my fiancé and I sat on the couch in stunned silence. I half expected him to be worried, maybe even mad that this had turned into something so big, but he wasn't. He laughed. Honestly, he said, if one social media post was enough to make this investor run, your dad must have already had one foot on a banana peel. You just showed him where to slip. We high-fived. But I knew the war wasn't over, not even close. My parents weren't going to take this lying down. It started with a random number texting me at 7:12 a.m. on a Saturday. You need to fix what you broke. No name, no context, just that. I blocked it and rolled over, thinking that was the end of it. It wasn't. That evening, I pulled into my driveway after work and saw 3 very familiar silhouettes standing near my porch. My parents and my sister. Arms crossed, faces tight, like they'd been rehearsing this ambush in the car. My stomach dropped. I didn't even get out of the car. I grabbed my phone and started dialing the non-emergency police line right there in the driver's seat. I wasn't interested in a conversation. I'd had 30 years of those and they'd never ended well. My sister rushed me before I could finish dialing. She yanked my phone out of my hand and hissed, "You don't get to call anyone. You don't get to hide this time." That was it. Something in me snapped, clean, sharp, irreversible. "You are trespassing," I said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "Give me my phone back, now." My dad stepped forward, red-faced, trying to play the calm authority figure he'd never been for me growing up. He launched into this speech about family reputation, sacrifice, and how I'd humiliated them publicly. He said I owed them an apology, that if I had any decency left, I'd call the investor and tell him I exaggerated. I laughed out loud. "You didn't ruin the deal," I said. "Dad did that. He and Mom started this. They picked a fight with me over something they had no right to expect, and when I didn't fold, they tried to sabotage my wedding. You think Eldridge backed out because of my tone? No, it's because they realized our family is a PR disaster." I was done. I hung up, blocked her, again. That night, my fiancé and I sat on the couch in stunned silence. I half expected him to be worried, maybe even mad that this had turned into something so big, but he wasn't. He laughed. "Honestly," he said, "if one social media post was enough to make this investor run, your dad must have already had one foot on a banana peel. You just showed him where to slip." We high-fived. But I knew the war wasn't over, not even close. My parents weren't going to take this lying down.
The next week was blissfully quiet, almost suspiciously so. No texts, no emails, no weird cars parked across from our house. It felt like the storm had passed. But I've seen enough horror movies to know when it's just the eye. It was my fiancé who found the letter. A plain white envelope slipped under our front door early one morning. No return address, just my name written in shaky cursive. Inside was a handwritten note from my mother. No "Dear Mark," no pleasantries, just straight to the point. She wrote about how devastated she was that I had chosen to humiliate her during what was supposed to be a joyful time in my life. She said she couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and had started day drinking, which was supposed to make me, feel guilty? She claimed my father's heart problems had worsened from the stress and that he needed to adjust his medication because of me. Then she said the part that truly made me set the paper down and laugh. "You're breaking the family legacy." Right, the legacy of neglect, manipulation, and image maintenance at all costs. She ended the note with a bizarre plea. Said if I still had any love for them, I would take down the Facebook post, reach out to the investor, and apologize publicly for misrepresenting the situation. I folded the letter neatly, walked it straight to the kitchen trash, and dropped it in like it was still wet. What really got under my skin wasn't the guilt tripping, it was how strategic the wording was.
No acknowledgement of wrongdoing, just vague, weaponized sadness, like I was supposed to feel bad because they felt bad. And the investor thing, that made it crystal clear. They didn't want to mend fences, they wanted damage control. Later that day, I got an email, this time from my sister. It was longer, more emotional. She told me Mom had stopped eating properly, Dad was barely speaking, and that the atmosphere in the house was funeral-like. She said the entire family was suffering because of my refusal to move on. That phrase, move on, set something off in me. I replied, short and to the point. Leah, you all made your choices. I finally made mine. This is what moving on looks like. Mark. And I blocked her. That evening, I spoke to my grandparents. I hadn't told them much since things exploded. They already knew the broad strokes, but not the full chaos. I filled them in. My grandfather was quiet for a while. Then he said, "We're proud of you, not just for standing up for yourself, for protecting your peace." Grandma agreed, then added something that stuck with me. The people who are loudest about family loyalty are usually the ones who gave you the least reason to feel any. That night, I lay in bed wondering if we should ramp up wedding security. We'd kept it pretty basic, just a check-in list, a friend of ours managing the entrance, but maybe it wasn't enough. Still, I clung to hope. Maybe after all this, they'd take the hint. Maybe the humiliation of being publicly exposed and losing a business deal would finally be enough. But they had one more card to play, and they were about to play it. 3 days before the wedding, I got a call from our venue manager. He sounded tense. "Hi, Mark. Just wanted to confirm, you're still expecting around 120 guests, right? We just had a strange call earlier from someone claiming to be your event coordinator. They asked to cancel the catering and reduce the guest count to under 40. My heart dropped. Wait, what? They had your full name, your fiancé's, your wedding date, the deposit info, said you had a family emergency and needed to scale back. But something felt off, so I figured I'd double-check before making any changes. I could feel the heat crawling up my neck. I thanked him, told him it was a scam, and hung up. And then I saw red. I called my fiancé at work and told him everything. He was quiet for a second, then said, "Okay, it's time." That night, we sat down and finalized everything we'd need to file the restraining order. We dug up the screenshots, the messages, the threatening text from the burner number, the letter, and the report from the venue. I had even started a small just-in-case folder weeks ago. I never thought I'd actually use it, but here we were. The next morning, we filed the papers, and then we braced for the wedding. Despite everything, I didn't sleep the night before. I kept imagining the worst, my parents showing up in dramatic fashion, my sister causing a scene, guests whispering, chaos at the altar. My grandparents stayed over to help calm me down, and I'm not ashamed to say my grandfather sat beside me in the kitchen at 3 a.m. while I drank herbal tea and stared into the void. Nothing they do tomorrow will change who you are, or who you've become. That line stuck with me, held me steady. And when the day finally arrived, it was perfect. Sunny, clear skies, exactly the right temperature. My fiancé looked like he walked out of a dream. Our friends and chosen family showed up in full force, and the vibe was joyful, not awkward, not anxious, just full of love. And when it came time to walk down the aisle, I stood tall, arm in arm with the two people who never once made me feel like an afterthought. My grandparents beamed. Grandma was already crying before the music even started. Grandpa whispered, "Steady thou, kid." But I could tell his voice was shaky too. And as I walked out and saw everyone stand, smiling, clapping, cheering, I felt something I hadn't since I was a little boy. Wanted. They didn't show. My parents, my sister. No car in the parking lot, no last-minute stunt, no expected entrance with dramatic music. They were gone. I didn't realize how much I was bracing for that until it didn't happen.
And for the first time in months, I let myself exhale fully. We got married in peace, and it wasn't just a ceremony, it was a rebirth. A line drawn, a new chapter opened, surrounded by people who chose us. That night, at the reception, one of my cousins came up and hugged me. She whispered, "This is the happiest I've ever seen you." I said, "It's the freest I've ever felt." But of course, peace never lasts forever. 3 days later, the emails started again.
The first email came with the subject line, "You owe us more than silence." It was from my sister, again. In it, she talked about how my mother had spiraled after the wedding, how my father was barely speaking, and how I had left a gaping hole in the family by not letting them be part of the most important day of my life. The nerve. She said Mom had started seeing a therapist, which you should be happy about since you made her need one, and that Dad's blood pressure was dangerously high from the betrayal. She ended with, "You've made your point, Mark. Now fix what you broke." I didn't respond. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. But the second email came that same night from a different burner address. Shorter. Angrier. "Hope your perfect wedding was worth destroying your parents' lives." Then the third one, a message sent to my husband's work email. That one crossed a line. It accused him of enabling division, warned him that karma catches up to homewreckers, and demanded he convince me to make things right. That night, we made our decision. No more waiting, no more hoping they'd get bored or let it go. We forwarded everything to our lawyer and confirmed the restraining order had officially been processed. The next morning, the papers were served. A 2-year restraining order. They couldn't legally contact me or my husband in any form, digital or physical. No calls, no emails, no lurking in parking lots, no sending third parties to deliver messages. And if they did, they'd be violating a court order. It wasn't revenge, it was protection, a boundary carved in stone. That night, I stood outside on the porch with my husband, wrapped in a blanket, watching the sky melt into purple. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt safe. But even then, a part of me knew they wouldn't let it end there. There was still one thread left dangling, and they were about to pull it. A week after the restraining order was served, things were finally quiet. No texts, no emails, no shadows outside the house. It was eerie, like they disappeared into the earth. A part of me waited for the next move, but nothing came. Until the letter. It was mailed, real postage, no return address, but the handwriting on the envelope was instantly recognizable. My dad's. My stomach clenched as I opened it, half expecting venom or threats or more guilt-soaked nonsense. But it wasn't any of those. It was a single page, typewritten, cold, clinical. "Mark, you made your choices. We'll respect that. You've made it clear we are no longer part of your life, and we won't attempt to contact you again. That said, you should know you've been removed from all family estate planning, legally, permanently. This includes any shares in the family business and property. We wish you well. D." I stood there in the kitchen for a while, just holding it. I wasn't shocked, not really, not angry either, just done. They wanted to have the last word. That was what this was, a final attempt to hurt me, to take something away as punishment. But they didn't realize they weren't taking anything I hadn't already let go of. I never wanted their money, I never needed their legacy, and I sure as hell didn't want anything to do with their business. I'd built my own life, from the ground up, with no help from them, no support, just me, the 2 people who actually raised me, my grandparents, and the man I chose to build a future with. That letter was just confirmation, the last nail in a coffin they'd been building for years. I scanned it, sent it to our lawyer for the record, then tossed the original in the shredder. And that night, we celebrated. I took my husband to the same tiny Italian place where we had our first date. We toasted with cheap wine. We split a ridiculous dessert. I laughed more in that one night than I had during most of my childhood. Because finally, the cycle was broken. No more chasing approval, no more waiting for apologies that would never come. No more making space in my life for people who only showed up to take. It took years of silence, a wedding war, a social media storm, a restraining order, but I found peace. I'm not sad they're gone. I'm sad it had to be this way, that they couldn't see me for who I was, not even at the end. But I know who I am now. I'm not the forgotten son. I'm not the shadow of the golden child. I'm a husband, a survivor, a man with a family of his own choosing. And that's more than enough.